22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.
And I'm not afraid to say it. Yes, I almost got caught, y'all slipping. Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Bob, a.k.a. Brooklyn Bob, a.k.a. PhD, welcoming all our listeners to tonight's People Before Politics radio show. Unfortunately, as you can see, my guest hosts are not in the studio with me at the moment. A.J. Woodson is taking a well-deserved vacation, catching up with family members out of town, and I am expecting co-host Damon Jones to arrive at the studio shortly, assuming that traffic will allow this to occur. And maybe we were expecting Minister Muhammad from Mosque Number 7 in Harlem, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to have him on the show tonight. Firstly, anyone, as y'all can see, we doing the Lonely Me show again today. So anyone who would like to call up to have a dialogue with me about the week's event, please feel free to call at 914-969-6499. Again, that's 914-969-6499. Anyone who's calling from out of town, you can also try at 718-705-4959. Again, that's 718-705-4959. So, and hopefully I'm going to hear from A.J. Woodson in a minute. In any event, everyone, this has been a very event-filled week. A lot of developments, both here in Westchester and throughout the nation, politically and otherwise. And so I'm sure what is on the mind of everyone is the topic of discussion, and that is the series of attempted violent attacks on a number of targets with Democratic left leanings here in the United States over the course of the past week. Of course, probably there were several of these attacks. Of course, the most heartbreaking of these attacks was the mass shooting that took place at a Jewish synagogue in Pittsburgh this past yesterday afternoon that resulted in at least 11 deaths and several additional injuries. Although the motivations of the shooter, I think his name is Robert Bauer, are not entirely clear, preliminary investigations do indicate that he had some sort of ideological axe to grind and saw the Jewish community as part of a grand plot to undermine the United States by assisting not immigrants, but to use Mr. Bauer's words that were reported by news media from his Facebook, assist invaders here in the United States. And unfortunately, the sense of angst that many Americans are feeling about the changes in the demographic makeup of the United States prompted Mr. Bauer to take extreme measures. And as he indicated in a social media post, to go in. And he subsequently murdered 11 people. Less reported, well, another widely reported attempted act of political violence this past week was, of course, the bombing, the mailings of 13 pipe bombs to various Democratic left-leaning figures, both in our political establishment and in our entertainment industry and other areas as well. A real, how shall we say, who's who list of prominent national leaders, including former President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle Obama. A bomb was mailed to former VP Joseph Biden, Senators Cory Booker, Kamala Harris. Who else received the bomb? Former First Lady and President Hillary and Bill Clinton received a mail bomb at their home in Chappaqua, New York, which is a couple of miles above us here in Westchester County. And then you had also targeted were George Soros, the wealthy leftist financier, and Tom Steyer, who has recently come to prominence because of the campaign, the very public campaign that he's launched, calling for the impeachment of President Trump. So all of these figures also received a bomb, were targeted for bombings by a Trump supporter who resided in Florida, as most of you probably know, Cesar Sayoc. In addition, if that were not enough, people were also unsettled, and especially members of the African American community were unsettled by reports that a gunman in Kentucky shot to death 2 African American customers at a Kroger's grocery store after he had failed to gain entrance into a local black church this past Sunday morning. So the totality of events, everyone, has many people very, very deeply shaken and has begun to raise a number of questions about the current state of political affairs here in the United States and whether or not this is just a temporary is sort of outbreak of insanity, if you will, or whether this is signals a new age. Welcome, caller. This is People Before Politics. Please state your name and purpose for calling. Hello, caller. Good afternoon, caller.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Woodson. Good afternoon. So, everyone, you can see even the best laid plans can go awry. I think that's my partner, A.J. Woodson, trying to call us from out of town, and there was a little bit of a mix-up, and I'm going to try to send A.J. the
Hello?
I am going to send A.J. the correct number.
Oh, y'all can hear me? I can't hear nothing that y'all are saying.
Okay, Mr. Woodson, I guess you can hear me over Facebook Live.
Anyway, this is AJ. I can't hear y'all to reply back to y'all. I'm hoping y'all can hear me.
We can, AJ. We can hear you. So, everyone, forgive me a minute. I'm a little bit distracted, trying to multitask. Let AJ know to call back. So, can we hang up the phone and allow Mr. Woodson to call back? Thank you. So, I'm sure many of, almost all of the listeners are extremely unsettled disconcerted and really, really deeply troubled and concerned about what this past week's events mean for the state of political affairs here in the United States going forward. And if you'd like to have a conversation about that, again, feel free to call in 914-969-6499. Again, that's 914-969-6499. And then maybe that's Brother Woodson. Good afternoon, people before politics. Please state your name and purpose for calling.
Hello, hello, hello.
Mr. Woodson.
Still can't hear anything.
No, we cannot hear you, Mr. Woodson. Mr. Woodson, you can't hear us. Call back. So. So it is a very deeply troubling set of events that occurred this past week. And again, it raises questions about where we're at, how are things going to unfold in the future, and ultimately, of course, what is the root cause for this outbreak in violence that we've seen. You know, my feelings about the matter are as to the issue of good afternoon. Please state your name and purpose for calling. Right. So I'm not sure. We're having technical difficulties. Maybe Mr. Woodson, AJ will call in later on. If anyone would like to call in, I'd certainly appreciate the dialogue. In any case, one of the big questions, again, that has been troubling everyone is what these events signal for American politics going forward and how we ought to make sense of these events. And as complex as they are, my own feeling is that we need to see these events perhaps in a broader historical perspective, which goes beyond the past 50 or so years of limited racial peace, the racial détente that was struck here in the United States following the culmination of the civil rights movement. I'm proud to say I hear someone is walking in the studio to save me. And in this respect, everyone, it may well signal a return to what we would consider to be historical normalcy. Okay, a return to historical normalcy. Although one of the things that I like to remind people is that while we in recent decades, those of us who are members of the post-civil rights generation, have become accustomed to a relative degree. People before politics, please state your name and purpose for calling. Just kill it. Kill it. That's okay. So I think everyone, it really will mark a return to normalcy. And in that sense, those of us who are born in the post-civil rights generation should indeed consider ourselves fortunate to have lived through the past 5 or so decades of relative racial détente here in the United States. Although we take it for granted that people of color, whites, blacks, everyone across the racial ethnic line can interact in relative harmony, it should not go unnoted that this is a rather recent development, and for the better part of the bulk of American history, it was not at all unusual to see reports of the kind of overt attacks, mainly by white supremacists, almost solely by white supremacists, on persons of color who they deem to be outsiders to American culture. And in that sense, everyone, I think this is actually and unfortunately a return to normal. And I think it opens up a whole series of questions that we had managed to shelve precisely.
Well, I'm just going to say hello and goodbye because I cannot hear anything going on in the show. I was trying to call in and contribute. What's up, Damon? I know Damon's in the studio. What's up, Bob? I'm
AJ?
going to listen to the show on the internet, but I was trying to call in.
AJ?
I cannot hear, so I don't know if I'm talking over y'all right now or not. But anyway, this is AJ calling in. I'm out. Peace.
We appreciate the call, AJ. What happened? Nothing. It's technical problem.
Oh. We can hear him, but he can't hear us. Oh, okay.
So, everyone, I have been saved by the bell. Damon Jones is in the house. DK, we want to get you on screen, man. I'm scared. If I don't see you on screen, you're not really there, man. I'm scared I might be.
He's here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, D, what's happening, man? Good to see you, brother.
Hey, good to see you too, sir.
Absolutely,
It's good to be here.
I know you were delayed a little bit by the traffic trying to come down over the bridge as you make the adjustment to life in northern parts of the...
Yeah, one of my many homes.
Okay, all right. You know, we ain't going to call you a Rolling Stone, though, brother. That would not be wise.
Yes, sir.
So.
I just text Minister Hafiz to see if what is his estimated time of arrival.
Okay.
So hopefully he responds and he doesn't forget, But we have had a busy week in national news.
Oh my goodness, it has been a very disquieting week.
Yeah,
to say the least.
Yeah, I am really, shocked by some of the Facebook posts, and I'm not surprised at the young black conservatives, loving
right.
to visit the White House.
Right.
Our people have always enjoyed sitting next to the slave master. Trying to quote Elijah Muhammad, he says, "We love the devil even though he gives us nothing." But and this is not picking party lines. This is just truth. Sometimes we like to put truth in a box. We like to call it liberal and call it Democrat and call it Republican and put labels. Put labels on the truth. And it's real shocking to me. I had this conversation with this coworker on a Facebook post, and I still sit back and I still wonder, how does poor white people continue to vote against their interests? How do middle class white people continue to vote against their interests? It's amazing, they just reported that Ford will be laying off because of the tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
More American companies might be laying off because of the tariffs. So, how can they champion this guy? And he's not for them. I told the guy, you don't have enough zeros in your bank account to be for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
If you're rich, I get it. Right? Or if you aspire to be rich, I kind of get it. But if you ain't got multiple zeros in your checking account, in your IRA, in your different accounts, then he's not for you. And it's as simple as that. He's definitely not for you. But we continue. Look, are the Democrats the saviors in this? They have done some things that are questionable. But right now, it's either them or Trump. in his version of nationalism, whatever that is. You know,
Right.
you know what president in the history of America? I haven't knows, and if anybody knows that's watching, please tell me what president in the history of America stood up and said they're a nationalist. And when did that become something great? You know, because if we said we were a black nationalist, they'll call us a racist.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, it's very interesting on what's happening.
Well, in a lot of ways, let me say firstly, with respect to the group of conservative black college students, I was very disappointed in the rather undignified display of, I'm going to say, obsequiousness that they showed when they visited the White House. Let us, for one, just put aside the deeper question of whether or not the president's policies are in the interest of communities of color or the United States as a whole. As a general matter, one does not treat the president as if he is a rock star. I just think that's the wrong kind of posture to take when you are in the presence of power, and it sort of anesthetizes you against saying anything at all critical to the of our leadership. And I think we have to be very careful about that. I'm not really surprised, though, to see that type of behavior, because I think the truth of the matter is people of all races and ethnicities are eager to fall over themselves in order to, you know, get a touch of the rich and powerful. And in that sense, I think many of the students who were in attendance really didn't seem to appreciate, number one, hey, you gave a symbolic endorsement to the president and his policies at a week when the chief topic of concern is how the president's rhetoric contributes to the deterioration of public safety here in the United States. And in that sense, they almost made it, gave a cachet of approval on the part of the black community by their behavior. And in that sense, I think it was very dangerous and misguided. You know, as for the question of nationalism, you know, we need to be clear that nationalism has been the animating spirit for the rise of so many oppressive regimes across the globe. Nationalism, on the one hand, has an ambivalent and seductive appeal because nationalism is a philosophy that purports to make one nation first in the face of other international competitors. But the ideology of nationalism is closely wedded to the belief that every society is characterized by a certain people in whose name these policies are carried out. And Americans need to be very clear that here in the United States, nationalism has always been invoked by the political establishment to ensure and protect the interests of white Americans against the interests of all others. And so for the president to invoke the specter of nationalism this past week and to question whether or not, why people would find it objectionable, I think is to totally ignore the close relationship between nationalism and white supremacy here in the United States. And I do not think this is something that we can ever forget. In that sense, the president, although it would be difficult to directly attribute any act of violence to the president, the general rhetoric that he has used and the continuous effort to paint people as enemies of the nation, of the people, from the inception of his campaign on up to yesterday's press conference rally, is more of the same, and really needs to be condemned. There's a good possibility. You know, D, when we were contemplating Trump presidency during the 2016 election cycle, one of the warnings that I issued was that the president, if he continued this kind of divisive rhetoric from that we heard on the campaign trail, once he entered into the White House, it was going to embolden white nationalists to rise up. And in that sense, that's precisely what we have seen. There have been a series of incidents in which the chief motivation seems to be on the part of the assailant, is to attack those individuals and entities that the president has publicly labeled as his enemy, the enemy of the people. And in this sense, it is very disturbing. And the president shows no compunction whatsoever. When asked about the use of this kind of rhetoric, he insists that there is nothing untoward or harmful about it. And in that regard, the president is, what can I say, man? The guy's living on another planet.
Well, there's a little hypocrisy in it, because how could he denounce the shooting in the synagogue, but he didn't denounce the white racist that was marching, saying Jews will not replace us? Right? He wouldn't denounce them when they were marching and saying that in when was that, Virginia?
Yes, in Charlottesville, Virginia.
In Charlottesville. And they was marching with tiki torches and saying Jews will not replace us. He didn't denounce them for that action, right? He blamed both sides, and he tried to cut the baby
fine
in the middle.
People.
Right? Yeah, fine people. But, you know, now because it's expedient for him, you know, because of that same rhetoric, Jews will not replace us, and his continuous rhetoric throughout the year, you have a shooting in a synagogue, but he denounces that because that's expedient. You know, Trump does what's expedient for him to do at the time. And I think if someone has enough time in a day to sit back and go through all his interviews, they will find him contradicting himself all the time.
Right.
Every week. You know, whatever is the flavor of the week, Trump is going to say it to be able to address it. But it shows his lack of leadership. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we have to have proper leadership. You know, no matter what side you're on, Democrat, Republican, you have to have proper leadership. Someone asked me, well, why would the president, why should he call former presidents that house was targets of terrorism? Because it's the right thing to do. You know, and it doesn't have to be, I mean, for anyone, no one, look, we all can imagine what it's like to be president, right? But only presidents understand what it's like to be a president. They understand that day-to-day living, that day-to-day grind, right? And regardless of the fact, you see, once they're out of that office, they all have an understanding, right? And it ain't that wall, I hate this one and I hate that one, because they all been through that ritual of the presidency, whether it's one term or 2 terms, you know. So civility, right? Civility would say, hey, listen, you know, I will give a call of condolences, or are you okay? Or just out of respect for that person that held that seat that you're in today. So that shows his lack of leadership on that issue, you know. And then we know the rest of the people that were sent the pipe bombs, he really doesn't care about, especially CNN. You know, so I mean, what we're looking at is just total ignorance in a part of leadership. and those people that support him, whether they're white or black. You know, we're turning a corner in American history where we lack the leadership among ourselves. You know, we lack the leadership among ourselves to correct it. You know, on a national level and a local level, we're lacking leadership. You know, we use code words to build the base up. Trump this and Trump that and Trump this to get people riled up. You know, how are you going to tell people in Westchester you're going to take on Trump and you can't take on Spezio? You scared of Spezio, but you want to take on Trump. Yeah, I said it. So don't fill the voters in Westchester the nonsense about taking on Trump, and you can't take on the Trump that's been sitting in Mount Vernon. Or you scared to. See that? I mean, this is playing with the emotions of the people. You know, it's playing with the emotions of the people. Trump this and Trump that. Trump this, Trump that. You know, Trump ain't shutting down businesses in Mount Vernon, knocking down bubbles. That ain't Trump. Right? They can't even handle that one. How they gonna handle Trump sitting in the White House? And they can't even handle a little one in Roosevelt Square. Come on, let's be serious. Stop playing with the people's minds. All of y'all, every single elected official, stop playing with the people. I mean, this is ridiculous. And then on a national level, you got people being killed over rhetoric. Come on. Come on. I think God needs to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah at this point, because he should be destroying America. All the hell that's going on around here, and nobody's doing nothing. It's really sad at this point. And then we use it for our own little personal gratifications or our little personal gains, but we still don't do nothing for the people. People still starving. Poor white folks still starving in the Midwest.
Messed up.
Twisted, but it's black people's fault. You know, it's my fault that you ain't got a job and you ain't graduate. But it's my fault. Oh, so you blame the black man. Blame the Latino man. Blame the immigrants. It's the immigrants, I tell you, it's the immigrants that you ain't graduate. Immigrants ain't got nothing to do with it. Tell one of them poor white men in Midwest to get his behind on them orange, to go to California, get one of them in them orange patches, them orange fields, and pick them oranges like the Mexicans. See how long he gonna last picking oranges, right? Right? They barely ain't want to pick cotton. They had us picking cotton for 500 years.
Nah, they ain't want to do that.
we know they ain't picking no oranges.
No, sir.
Huh? Or no pineapples or bananas and stuff. They ain't doing that.
We're not even being honest about what's going on here.
Come on, man.
You need to be looking at all them. You need to look at like Trump. You want to know where your money went? It went in the pockets of people like Trump, the 1% that has defied their obligation to the betterment of the United States by demanding that their taxes be constantly ratcheted down and, you know, flooding Washington with an endless wave of cash. His lobbying has grown exponentially. We've seen a sort of historical reversal of the tax burden here. Our corporations and our most well-to-do segments of the society are not paying their fair share. That's where your money went. So but you know, look, the reality is that the responsibility for the level of tension and violence that we are experiencing in the country today falls four square on the shoulders of the Republican Party, because it has been the Republican Party's strategy to try to regain control of the presidency and the Congress and many a state and local legislator by continuously appealing to the racial resentments of white folks. And that cannot be denied. So, you know, look, I don't know what to tell anyone, because one of the discussions that we're having today is the degree to which any particular politician or political party bears responsibility. And many a commentator seems to insist that there is equal responsibility on both sides for the kind of violence that we see unfolding today. And I just do not think that this is a fair-minded and balanced assessment of the kind of rhetoric that we ordinarily see coming from the two parties. I don't ever remember, Damon, in my life, and I'm a pretty good student of American politics, I don't remember ever in American politics a white man being cast in a political commercial as a sort of natural-born killer who poses a threat to the safety and well-being of the entire American body politic. And this is a regular feature.
Oh, you talking about the young brother up in the running for Congress? They got him all tagged.
Yeah, well, he's the latest version, but you know, this goes at least back to Willie Horton.
Yeah.
If not further, this is the standard operating playbook.
Exactly.
Of the deeply racist, white supremacist strand of the Republican coalition. And there's no way that anyone can get around this. Those folks, the reality is, anyone who is a Republican today is giving cover to the racist nationalist appeals that seem to be whipping so many white
Bob,
folks
I
up
have
into a
the
frenzy.
text. You have to when you use those big words, you have to explain those words.
See, I wasn't even sure which one.
He said, which one?
Frenzy?
She said,
That's when my training gets the best of me. I'm trying to find some way to persuade someone.
hey, but all right, I got something for you, Bob. Here, Elias said something great, and I'm gonna let you tackle it, and then he said, I would suggest that MAGA is about to return to a Confederate States of America, home of white supremacist ideologues who lost the Civil War. I would argue that Nazi ideology in alliance with the Klan is treason, not nationalism of a U.S. That defeated the Confederacy. What say you, Bob?
Well, I must say, I might have to give a good brother Goodsight the same advice he gave to me to start with. Trying to pick through the many strands. You know, I guess is sort of, can there be positive and negative versions of nationalism? I think is freighted within that, in part. You know, again, to the extent that nationalism looks to mobilize sentiments by drawing a distinction between the people and not the people, it is almost certain to have destructive consequences. Certainly, in the case of the United States, the most rabid kind of nationalism that we see stirring up trouble today does harken back to the conflict in the Civil War. But I don't know, you know, I don't know where that leaves us. I don't know if that was a satisfactory response. I didn't.
Well, no, I think he's right. I really think we're getting to the point where we're going to have a civil war.
We're going to have a civil war.
I really do believe that something is going to happen between these northern states and these southern states sooner or later, because you know, poor white people don't get it. I mean, they have fell for the banana in the tailpipe of blaming of allowing these leaders to blame everybody else for their woes, which is the modus operandi when dealing with poor white people and their anger, right? And taking that anger and getting their poor money, and how can you blame black people? You're on welfare, right? You're on welfare and you're in the Midwest, but it's my fault, right? It's some Negro's fault that I'm on welfare. And then you're on welfare and you're rooting for a politician that says, I'm going to cut Medicaid and Medicare. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to cut these benefits. And you're like, yeah, cut them from the black guys. And like, don't even know that you're going to get cut too. I really don't get it. And back to the argument I had with a coworker, which he ended up calling me racist, because I question why do white people vote against their interests, right? I'm a civil service worker, and I'm sitting here, and you're supporting people that don't support unions, and you're voting for them, and you're walking around talking about government is too big. Now, how you work for the county? You work for the county government, and you're saying government is too big. Then you goddamn it, turn your idea in. Start with you. Like they don't understand it. It's like they don't get it. And you sit back, and then my statement was, well, if you don't want to understand that you're part of that, then you're just voting for the person because he's white. Because what else do you have to identify him with? You're not rich, right? You're a civil service worker. You're part of the union. He wants to destroy unions. He wants to take rights away. And basically, the Janus decision just wiped that out, right? So he does all these things to you, and you still don't recognize that he's basically tearing your livelihood down, your protections, your job protections, your health benefits. He's tearing everything down, but you still vote for him. So the only thing that you have common, right, is that you're white. Is that you're white, and it's not being. And then the guy called me racist and went off to a tangent and all this other crazy nonsense. But then he messages me and talking about I was correct. He just didn't like the way I said it. Then I had to post that and embarrass him, because then who are you showboating for? But at the end of the day, I mean, it's just not. It's not me speaking. This is what people talk about, because they wonder, right? They wonder. The poor white people vote against their interests. And what are they voting for? Then they have to just be voting for their whiteness. And I'm not being, and whoever's listening, you could call me whatever you want to call me. I've been called all type of names. I really don't care. But the understanding is, right, for us to move forward as a nation, and for the working class people, we even divided there. And people didn't believe me when I said, look, everybody's talking about the NRA, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the NRA, this and that. But if you in law enforcement, most of them are members of the NRA, right? So how do you say we got to get the illegal guns off the street, but we're not going to support the legislation, for common sense gun laws? Because we want our Second Amendment rights and duties, which they got it all twisted anyway. But most of the NRA members are law enforcement. Most of the organizations that support the NRA are law enforcement unions. Mm-hmm. So you can't say you want illegal guns off the street, but then you don't want to have common sense gun laws. But then when a cop get killed by a legal gun, it's all, we got to stop crime, we got to do this, we got to do that, and it's all this ceremony and pomp and circumstance, which there should be. Cop gave his life, but you still don't address the issue. You still don't address the issue. So until we have honest conversation, and then how these institutions are connected by their whiteness, the NRA, the FOP, police unions, they're connected by their whiteness.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any way we could deny this. The common thread is that these are seen as essentially tribunes. The police and the NRA is seen as tribunes.
Exactly.
That are going to protect white people against the unfair efforts to take something from them that's undeserved by people of color. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, D. Number one, I think anyone to accuse you of racism seems to be unaware of the larger debates that have taken place here in the United States over precisely this question. Why is it that we see throughout the decades here in the United States that whites continuously vote against their economic interests? And probably the most recent and most forceful example of an author taking up this question was by the white liberal progressive thinker Thomas Frank, who publishes a book in 2014, What's the Matter with Kansas?, in which his question is, how does a state like Kansas, which was once seen as a bastion of progressivism, suddenly abandon its progressive past as the 60s, 70s, and 80s begin to bring about a change in the dominant policy here in the United States and witnesses the ascent of Republicans? This, as you probably know, is a question that was asked by W.E.B. Du Bois during the writings that he did at the turn of the 20th century, in which he posits that white people continue to support policies that work against their economic interests because they receive some sort of psychological compensation.
Exactly.
Recognition. And look, it's a complicated matter because I actually do think that in many respects, this is a complicated matter because we live in a complex world in which it's extremely difficult for anyone to make sense of all of the vast forces, impersonal forces operating beyond their beyond their vision, that are responsible for a lot of the problems that they experience. So this is a situation that we all find ourselves in today, where increasingly we all must rely on the reports of some outside person to tell us what's going on in some remote part of the nation that does have an impact on us. For example, what kind of policies the president proposed to enact this past week. None of us know this. I didn't see what went on in Washington this past week. I didn't even see what went on in City Hall in Mount Vernon this week. Instead, the only way that I had any kind of insight into what went on is because some other person made a report for me, and I had to decide whether to accept it as being true or not. And what's happening in the United States is that given the complexity, many whites are putting their faith in another white person. How do I know? Well, you know what? The only way that I'm going to really make a judgment as to who I trust is based on skin color. And so I'll go with the white man's interpretation of events, not realizing that oftentimes their interpretation of events is distorted by their own political interests. I mean, Republicans aren't going to tell you that they're robbing you because they want to keep on robbing you. They have an interest to distort the truth of what's going on here in the United States. And unfortunately, too many whites can't see this. And the basic line is that the reason that you are poor is because you pay too much in the way of taxes on social welfare programs that are used to pamper undeserving, lazy people of color.
Yeah.
That's the diagnosis. But when the irony, of course, is that anyone who is familiar with the federal budget or any of our state budgets knows that the lion's share of our budgets are not going towards social welfare payments, towards social services. The overwhelming bulk of the money that is being raked into the government coffers week in and week out is going for defense spending and policing and locking motherfuckers up. But draconian policies, but surely no policies that are designed to improve, that make the improvement of people's economic situation a secondary concern. No, that's not where your money goes.
Exactly.
Do you want me to tell you what else happens to your money? What else happens to your money is our local and state governments continue to evade the contracting requirements that are going to get us the best dollars for our municipal contracts that we sign. And instead, you have people like Mayor Richard Thomas who continue to hire and engage in all kind of machinations in order to bring in
machinations.
Tricks,
Thank you.
Trickery. Engage in trickery and thievery. Machinations. In other words, the mayor get up and talk shit in front of everybody and give him the impression that he's doing the right thing, and all along he's finding some way to get Joe Spezio's contract placed on top. That's why we're messed up, because this is happening in localities all across the United States. If you look at the news reportage on Joe Spezio's municipal businesses, we know that the kind of corruption that him and the mayor are now engaged in is a repeat act for him. He's done this all over.
Opa-locka, Florida.
Right. All over.
Is it a coincidence that the mail bombs came from Opa-locka?
I don't know. Maybe Joe. maybe that was Joe's trainer. Joe been trying to get back in shape.
Yeah, because he know he got an ass whipping on layaway.
Uh-oh.
Okay, all right. Listen, I found this. This is very what Martin Luther King Jr. and I'm gonna post. I'm gonna post this somewhere, man. I gotta figure out where. He said that the white liberal must see that the Negro needs not only love but justice. It's not enough to say we love Negroes. We have Negro friends. They must demand justice for Negroes. Right? Mm-hmm. Love that does not satisfy justice is not love at all. It's just merely sentimental affection. It is not conditional upon one staying in his place or watering down his demands in order to be considered respectful. So, the white liberals at the time was telling Martin Luther King, just, hey man, we got your back, but you causing our white friends, to look mad, to look at you funny. And he was like, the hell with that. But I think more white people need to check other white people on their racism. See, because they hear it every day. They hear the racism every day. We don't, because we know we will respond. But they'll feel comfortable, around other white people and check other white people on their racism. See, white people don't do that. And it's, and it is what it is. Some do, but the majority don't. They allow people to bastion in their racism, and they don't say anything. They just walk away. Some walk away upset. They condone the racism, and that's the sad part. Like I would not sit back and allow a black person to disrespect a white person at my job, because that's not the way I am. I'll check them. That's not what you just did. Isn't right. you know, and vice versa. Because we have to treat all, you know, with respect. But I'll call a racist situation what it is. You know, don't get it twisted at my job. But I think you know, as they quick to call us racist, you know, they don't check themselves in their racism. And I think that's you know, until white people take off the lens of white supremacy and actually put the lens in the glasses of equality on, maybe they'll see something different. You know, because if a black man is stopped for going into his own apartment and having keys, stopped by a white woman, if a black man is babysitting 2 white children and he's followed and have police called on him by a white person, right? If black people can't barbecue without having police called on them, if a little black girl can't sell water on the steps of her apartment, you know, do I need to go on? If black people just can't sit in Starbucks and just chilling, using the Wi-Fi, drinking a mocha laka, whatever them damn coffees is named, right? You know, we can't do normal shit without a white person calling the cops on us. You know, you can't walk through the store without them looking at you and wondering if you're gonna rob something. You know. Shit, I go in the store, man. If I don't find something in the store, I buy something. I don't want these motherfuckers.
Yeah, come out.
Right. I'm like, shit.
Like a tax now.
Listen, I walked in the store, right? I'm not going to say what store. Walked in the store, walked around. I'm like, damn, they ain't got nothing I need. So I walked around again. And I walked around again. And I just had to buy something, right? Because I don't want them fucking staring at me like, you know, what are you coming here for? Does he have something in his pocket?
Oh, that's right. And you're not here anymore.
Right.
That's a very different context.
Right. But even if I was here, you know, I mean, being a black male, you know, you have to have certain spidey senses, man. Right? Then you have to watch out for yourself because you already looked at as threatening. Look at the young black kid who I guess he missed the bus or something, and he just knocked on the man's door. I mean, just ask him some information or something, and the dude shot at him. Kid, just going, and they showed the testimony on the wife. She says, "Well, we didn't know he was a high school student. He was very big for his size. He was very big." You know, that's what she was saying. Like, Jesus Christ! But that's what they use. You know. I mean that's what Darren Wilson used for Mike Brown. He was Hulk. He was just a Hulk. You know, just a big buck Negro. You know, that's how they describe us. You know, after they kill us. You know, and I know they describe me that way. So shit, I'm extra cautious because I don't want to make the wrong moves and get shot and I'm killed. You know, because that's what they do. That's what they do, and people don't understand being a black man. They don't want to. White folks don't want to understand. They don't care because they live in their whiteness. They live in a bubble. They live in a bubble, right? I mean, black people, the only people that just can't hide. You know, Latinos can hide. Some black people. I mean, I have cousins that passed as white. You know. Verplanck. They lived in Verplanck for years. Yeah, Verplanck was a sundown town. If you was black, you had to get the hell up out of Verplanck. That's right here in Westchester. Right before Peekskill.
Oh, I didn't know we had any sundown towns.
Oh, Verplanck was a sundown town, brother. My mother had cousins there, lived there for years. People didn't know they were black. You know, so they're out there. You know, so I mean, You just we have to watch ourselves, man. We have to have that talk, man. Who has that talk? White folks don't have to talk. One guy I was listening to Al Sharpton. The guy said, this white guy, he says, oh no, I'm not privileged. He said when I was young playing with guns, the cop stopped and taught us how to hold a gun properly. Right?
How nice of him.
He didn't stop and shoot us. He stopped and taught us how to hold a gun properly. But see, that's what it is. We don't want to have that conversation. You know, we scared to have that conversation that racism exists in America. You know, to be, oh man, why you make it all black and white? Because it is. I mean, this country was built off of the suppression of people of color from the beginning. When Columbus got lost, right, and found these people over there and called them Indians and slaughtered them all. But we have a parade all the time, and he was this great navigator. And then they wanted to make peace and gave all the Indian blankets with smallpox in them.
You know, I think one of and this is a difficult issue that I'm going to raise, because I think, in some respect, there's a certain kind of denial on the part of people of color as to what is going on here in the United States. And I think that one of the factors that contributes to the kind of outbursts of white rage that we're seeing today is symptomatic of the assault that whites feel that their identity is under as whites. And I say this because I think that we need to acknowledge that since the onset of the struggles of the civil rights movement, there has been a critical reassessment. I don't say so much an attack, but a critical reassessment of the kind of rosy vision of history, of American history, that was so long popular in the United States, in which the United States is depicted as an exceptional nation whose heroes are the personification of unadulterated virtue. We need to believe, in other words, having had those kind of stories about the greatness of the American democratic project sort of drilled into their heads for so long, the efforts that have been underfoot lately, especially from the scholarly community, have really punctured that mythology and shown that the role of whites, white Americans, both in terms of the development of our nation and also in terms of the global social order, has not been the, totally heroic story that's often told. There's good and bad in these stories. And I think one of the things that a lot of young whites especially are feeling is a lack of positive identity that I think is, having real serious consequences. And the reason why I think that's important, because I think also it's kind of ironic that of all of the bases that white Americans and whites across the globe, insofar as we could even identify a single group as whites, could embrace as a positive contribution to world culture, world humanity, is two things. The very legacies that are most revered and most appreciated across the globe, I think, are science and democracy. White folks got a good claim to, putting those things in motion. And yet here in the United States, it's exactly, those are the two things. I think that for better or worse, it doesn't mean it's a perfect society. Those are lasting contributions to humanity that whites can take some pride in, that we did something positive, science and democracy. And yet what is ironic about the current moment that we find ourselves in, it's almost a return to the dark ages in which Republican leaders and their theological allies in the evangelical white-dominated church, mainly in the South, totally reject science, the findings of science, the real advances that science has brought us, the kind of forecast that science allows us into important trends that we're confronting. Because so much of the message of science, while science itself is an extremely powerful tool, it has rendered a damning indictment, especially on the capitalist order that has been created.
Exactly.
Everyone, this shit is not going to last long. If you're watching the news, you must be aware the UN's IPCC, the Interplanetary Commission on Climate Change, issued a report. This basically has found that if humanity does not find a way to reverse the amount of carbon that we're spewing into the environment, we're going to be on an irreversible pathway towards destruction and possible extinction. And here, everyone, I do not use the term extinction lightly. We're now living through what many science writers call a sixth extinction. The rate of species loss, habitat loss across the globe is unprecedented and is only going to create a planetary crisis as droughts and famines and other kind of disruptions to the global climate bring about reductions in our food supply and disruptions of human settlements and create climate refugees. See, so the very thing that white Americans should take some pride in as a genuine contribution to humanity, they have rejected because Republican religious leaders do not like the message that it is giving to them. Capitalism is not sustainable. It's not sustainable, everyone. So that's number one. And the democratic project, the project that allows ordinary people to have a say in the selection of their leaders and in the policies that they institute, generally, I believe, are to the betterment of humanity. I think it's a good thing when I have some say in the face of elite influence who's going to be my leader and what kind of policy he or she is going to adopt. But in both instances, it seems like so many segments of white America are rejecting the most profound kind of cultural contributions to which they can genuinely lay claim. And it's unfortunate because outside of an embrace of a more positive contribution, the only thing that so many of these lost white young men especially seem to gravitate towards is a negative self-identity in which the affirmation of their power as a person can only come through demeaning, belittling people of color, if not killing them outright. And insofar, you're going to have more and more young white men who are lost. The scientific evidence as of late is undoubtable. There's been a series of studies that have been released by medical researchers that have shown that white Americans are the only group, major racial or ethnic group here in the United States in recent years that has not seen an increase in their lifespan, but rather a decrease in their lifespan.
And their birth rate.
And the conclusion is that much of this has to do with widespread feelings of despair. The whites are experiencing as the kind of middle-class dream that their parents and grandparents before them had taken for granted have been pulled underneath them, and they don't have a way to, get some of the good life that's been promised to them as Americans. And, my fear is that too many of them white folks are going to continue under the influence of Republicans That's why I don't care who you are. I'm not voting for a Republican. Ever. It'll be a long time. You gotta be a second coming of Lincoln. But so long as Republicans continue to flirt with white supremacy in the naked ways the president is doing today, no black person should vote for any Republican. I don't give a damn what your color is. Black, white, yellow, pink, orange.
Oh, and before some silly Negro or somebody say, well, Martin Luther King was a Republican. The Republican Party that Martin Luther King belonged to is not the Republican Party of today. Let's not even let's not even entertain that complete nonsense. Yes, blacks were part of the Republican Party, right? Because blacks are loyal people. Lincoln freed the slaves. Blacks went Republican, right? What was it? President Johnson, the New Deal, right?
Franklin Roosevelt,
Franklin Roosevelt.
Johnson, the war on poverty.
Right.
Great Society.
Yeah. They jumped on the other side. Right? They went Democrat. And that's when we're loyal to whoever does us right, or attempts to do us right. But I wanted to, real quick, I saw a comment from Matumbo Muhammad. He said, I know this is off subject. Any opinions about the young Black Republican Summit that Trump gave? We talked about it real earlier. We didn't give a lot. Yeah, look, these young brothers and sisters, they have a right to support Trump. I personally think they're very highly misinformed about what's going on and about what's really happening. And I don't know, maybe they're disconnected to their parents, or maybe their parents are conservatives too. I don't know, But, Kanye West Brexit shirt. I mean, hey, look, Kanye West has found a new market to sell his shit. It is what it is. It's capitalism at its best, right? It's capitalism at its best. You have the conscious blacks are not dealing with Kanye, so he's going to go to some of these other people that's going to deal with him. I mean, it's all about Kanye. Kanye's trying to sell records.
I mean, what I just have to ask, because obviously this is a play on words, but what exactly? I never saw Kanye's Brexit shirt. And what does Kanye? I mean, it's a play on Brexit.
Right, that's the new thing now. But see, Kanye
don't know nothing about American politics.
Exactly,
so how does he know what's going on?
Right, he doesn't even get the 13th
European
Amendment
Union and all that stuff.
Right, he doesn't even get the 13th Amendment correct. And for all y'all say, well, I was suspended off Facebook around the Holy Day of Atonement, but I was still watching Minister Farrakhan, and he was speaking, and he agreed with Kanye at one point publicly. That was about the 13th Amendment. But he had to help, and he said it in his speech, I'm going to help Kanye out in explaining what he was trying to explain, right? So people started posting, Farrakhan said Kanye West was right. He said he was right about the 13th Amendment. And although we know the minister is graceful enough, he will not down a brother or sister publicly, right? He went on to explain. But he didn't say everything Kanye said was correct, right? He talked about the 13th Amendment, and in which the 13th Amendment has never been challenged, where if you become a felony, you basically revert back to slavery. I mean, it's there. And that's something that we have to address, and I think Michelle Alexander in her book, The New Jim Crow, gave a litany of legislations and laws passed through Republican and Democratic, through Congresses and presidents that have definitely did disservice to black people throughout the United States and over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And what she also made it clear was in that time we had black judges and black legislators and black police chiefs and black this and black that and black this. And they didn't do anything to fill the gap, And the question is, are black politicians enablers of racism within the criminal justice system? You know, I mean, we have to ask that question, because if we see districts and we see areas where we are represented by black politicians, and they're unable to change legislation, right? Because it's not just about, you know, bringing awareness. It's about legislation. Only way you're going to change shit, you got to change legislation and laws, right? And if you don't, and policies and procedures, when you're dealing with institutions and those that are head of institutions, and if you don't put the correct people in there, right, they're not going to change policies and procedures or create those policies and procedures. I just don't want a black face in the place. I'm tired of that shit, because we done had black faces in places and they haven't done a goddamn thing, and then we wonder why nothing has changed, right? If we look at Westchester County, nothing has changed since 1992, since the last full report of the African American Revised Report on the conditions of black people here in Westchester. Actually, it got worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it got worse. I believe reading the report, it got worse, right? Because we still don't have a lot of black male teachers, right? We still don't. I mean, 119 in White Plains was a plethora of black businesses, and there's none. There's no black-owned businesses. The last black-owned business that actually owned the land and the property was the World of Beauty, and that's gone. You know, so where are the black businesses? And I talked to a brother. He works in the food service at the jail. That's one of his many gigs, and he was telling me that Greenburgh and White Plains does not allow food trucks
to travel through it,
or
to sell. Oh,
to
vendors,
sell. Vendors in the sell. Right. That's for minorities, people of color. That's the next best thing, because it's so much money to open up a restaurant. Right. What many minorities are doing throughout the nation is doing the food truck thing.
Right. Because
it's cheaper, the insurance cheaper, and it's less overhead. White Plains and Greenburgh does not allow food truck vendors. And I think that's something that we need to talk, because young people can start businesses doing food trucks. It's a good business, but they don't allow it. Mount Vernon, you know, you see food trucks all over the place. You know, Yonkers, I think there's food trucks. You know, Manhattan, just forget about it. Right down in D.C., food trucks. You know, that's what people do. But when you have a city like White Plains, that is the county seat, you know, and they don't allow, you know, food trucks. I think it's something that people needs to wonder why, you know. So that's down the line. But you know, I mean, we have to develop businesses, man. We're not developing businesses. You know, where are our black businesses in Westchester County? You know, where are our black clothing stores? You know, Westchester. I mean, we like apparel. Black people like apparel, right? We're very materialistic, right? We ain't even got that.
I mean, I remain very dubious about the feasibility. Well, let me step back. One of the themes that has continuously been raised from many quarters of the black freedom struggle, whether it be Marcus Garvey, or others, is the call for the establishment of an independent black economy as a way of improving our economic standing. And this debate has been going on within black America for at least a century now. One of the earliest entrance to that debate is a book by a brother whose name I gotta dig out mine, but it's, I think, Black Capitalism. It's probably black sociologists was writing during the 30s. And, you know, one of the issues that's raised is that as we make a transition from a economy in which the majority of players are small businesses of relatively equal size to the kind of corporate dominated economy in which we've lived over the past half century, the requirements for entry, capital requirements, are much bigger. Today it's going to be very difficult for any black person to start a business because at least most of the most robust sectors of the economy require a considerable kind of capital investment. And in asking the question of why black businesses can't succeed, or have difficulty, not can't succeed, we can't avoid this question of lack of capital and the historic role that slavery and Jim Crow have played in it. And if we are going to have a serious conversation, this is a difficult issue for us to wrap our heads around, but if we're going to have a serious conversation about social injustice today, we must place it in a historical context that says that the United States of America committed a historical crime against black people that can only be rectified, and I'd say Native Americans, that can only really be rectified through a program of reparations.
Well, the Native Americans got theirs, according to
George Custer?
No, according to oh man, I got one of his books in my car. He wrote Powernomics.
Yes, Anderson.
Yes, Dr. Claude Anderson.
He
says that the Native Americans got theirs, but when it was time for the blacks to be signed on to that same treaty, they refused to do it at the time. He goes into that the treaties that United States went into with the Native Americans was supposed to be the same treaties that it was for the free blacks. But, you know, as in this time now, you know, there are certain, you know, Negroes that, you know, go against what is good for the whole of the people. I think reparations is still something. I mean, I know that one of the congressmen from Detroit, Conyers was pushing the legislation for reparations, to talk about reparations, and there should be a form of reparations. I mean, because the United States totally reneged on the 40 acres and the mule for the free slaves. They reneged on that, you know. So there should be some compensation on how, you know. And we're not talking about handouts. Let's don't get it twisted. We're talking about contracts. You know, it was a contract, and the United States reneged on that contract. Everybody else, ethnic group, got some type of reparations on when United States did them wrong, but the sons and daughters of slaves. Japan, they got reparations from an act of war, and the war that they started, and they still got money. Right? You know, we dropped Fat Boy and Little Bay, whatever they called them, bombs, and blew them up, and then we gave them reparations, right? But they started the war. So I mean, you always question the devaluation of black life in America, man. You know, on how, I mean, from the reporting of loss of life to just how blacks have been treated. But then when we get these people that, you know, talk about, you know, those young people, these young people that are going to this conservative things, you know, they don't even give a fuck about slavery. Like, you know, like, why do you bring up slavery?
Listen. Right,
but they will never tell a Jewish person not to bring up the Holocaust. Right? I challenge every black person, every person, to just tell a Jewish person, do not to forget about the Holocaust, right? They don't tell a Jewish person that. But they tell black people that. We're always told, well, why you always want to, even some dumb, foolish black people, well, why you always want to talk about slavery? You never say that to a Jew, right? You'll go celebrate the Holocaust anniversary. You'll put a beanie on your head. You'll do anything that you want to do, right, to show respect to those that were lost in the Holocaust. But when it comes to your black self, you say, well, why do we have to talk about slavery? I mean, this is the mindset, you know, of black people. Sandra A. Rose said they are a segment which require, hold on a second, which require up to 100 to get started in online business, but too many of us are sitting around addicted and wasting, not being strategic on social media. I do agree, but some of us don't have $100 to $500 to spend to invest. I mean, that might be part of the problem too. I mean, we ain't got $500 to invest because we're living day to day to a paycheck, and we still got the Obama phone. We don't know how it's on. That's why we on Facebook. You know, we just rocking out. They are so not giving us anything. Why do you think they keep modern day slavery, profile, etc.? We have to go for it within their system, and lots of us are doing it. Okay.
No, that's not okay.
Well, if lots of us are doing it, then where is the expansion to hire more young black people to? I mean, we blew Silicon Valley. Ain't much of us out there. Silicon Alley ain't much of us in there. I do agree that we use social media for other than income making, right? We use social media for nigga shit, and that's, you know, and that's what we use social media for, right? We don't use it to expand our economic portfolio and to make us money. I do agree with that, but I also have to say that many of us don't have the money to actually invest. You know, you said no.
Yeah, man, I think that's a false choice that we're giving. And either we fail, or if we're going to seek success, we seek success in terms of the system, the status quo. That's not our options, everyone. We do have, in fact, the option to change the system. As difficult as it may be, there are going to have to be serious structural changes in the American economy, in the global economy for that matter, if we are going to bring about a greater sense of injustice. And too often, when people are framing the kind of solutions that are available to us, they start from this assumption that we can't change anything. And this world has changed. The world changed a lot. I mean, imagine how much more do you think the present day American society would have to be changed in order to bring about greater justice, as compared to the degree of change that the U.S. economy had to go through in abolishing slavery? I mean, the elimination of slavery in the United States represents a profound and fundamental change in the workings of the economy, and that happened in the past. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to. You know what? I'm very clear about it. Some of y'all keep on trying. I want y'all to keep on going to your jobs and trying to become a gazillionaire. You're not going to become a gazillionaire because that's not the nature of capitalism.
Exactly.
Capitalism is continuously driving for more and more efficiency. It is a war of all against all. One reason why black people don't have much, Latino people don't have much, poor people don't have much, is because those who are richer are able to successfully wage an economic battle to take over your business, your market share.
Exactly.
How to make sure we either going to outcompete you and outbid you and lower the price until you have to give in. Or if that doesn't work, we're going to erect artificial barriers to prevent you from entering by requiring licenses for cheaper forms of businesses that might be open to you.
Exactly.
See, so we have to go beyond. Look, everyone, we need to make history. This is a big problem that black people have. We think that the only alternative is either to enter into the system as it exists or to simply accept a life on the margins of society, and that is not the case. We need to build alternative economic models. And in order for us to do that, we need to have a gut check and revisit our values. One that makes enrichment its primary goal of life. There's more to life, y'all. Kanye might have been right. Not having money is everything. Having money is not everything, but not having it is. We got to find a way so we can have more equitable distribution of wealth today, period. The capitalist economy in which we live, and this is where I break ranks with my democratic counterparts. The capitalist economy that we're living under will not offer us the kind of economic security that we are looking for. If anything, the expansion of the middle class that we see during the 20th century, it is arguable, is a thing of the past, and that elites have gained so much control over societies that they are now going to put us in a stranglehold and continuously eliminate the social safety net. Anything that's going to give ordinary working people an advantage, they're going to eliminate because they don't want to pay taxes. So we better be prepared to wage a real fight politically, both against our Republican opponents and within the Democratic Party itself, because you got so many corporate Democrats, and we must wage a battle to transform capitalism. The species will not survive. Humanity cannot survive. We kidding ourselves.
Exactly.
For a pot, you know what? Your kids is not gonna, everyone, our kids and grandchildren. I'm gonna live, if I'm lucky, I'll live another 20 or so years, 20, 30 years. Maybe by mid-century, 2050. My son, he might live another 30 years after that. My son might be around till about 2070 or so. If we keep on at this business as usual, what do you think the planet is going to look like in 60 years?
Mom won't be here. I can't. Fucking, I'm done.
Like if you look at projections for the way the climate is going to change, the coast is going to change the seasons, the kind of decrease in crop yields, look, everything. We got to stop this.
That shit you see on TV with the end of the world, it's coming, man. I just hope, look, if I have any seeds just left on the earth, God bless you, man. But I just hope I'm gone, man. I do not want to see the moon come crashing into the earth and all this other crazy stuff, because it's going to happen. I mean, it's bound to happen, because when you have people saying that global warming is a fucking myth, right? And we do not respect the earth. We do not respect, we do not respect the earth. It seems like we don't give a shit about the earth, right? We fuck it up. We like, what was the stuff that they just can't even do anything with? Styrofoam, right? They know that they can't even break down styrofoam, right? But they continue to make this shit, right? What do you do with all the fucking styrofoam after centuries and centuries? You can't even recycle it. It's not recyclable, but you continue to make it. It goes against everything that the earth is, and you continue to make this stuff, right? So I mean, like, we really don't care. But the multi-millionaire, billionaire people, they're building rocket ships to get the fuck up out of here, bro. They're building space stations outside of the earth, and that's what's going to happen. It was some movie, right? The earth was dying, right? But the rich people built a space station, and the only way the average
Brad Pitt's Ethereum, not Brad Pitt.
What was it?
Matt Damon's Ethereum.
Yeah. And the only way you got up there, you had to be a servant. Right? I mean, that's real. That's real. I mean, it might not be in our time, but it's coming, and we're gonna be asked, out like everything else, right? Like, oh, what's that? Oh, medical marijuana, right? We knew it was coming to New York, right? Is black folks getting only a few black folks, some black folks that can tap into money, but the average black person is not going to be able to invest and start a company on medical marijuana, right? We're not even going to have enough money to pay all the state fees and fines that we have to do just to get it up and running, right? Here we ass out again, and now the big cigarette companies are trying to figure out a way how they could jump in it and take over that now. So I mean, but see, my thing is, when we as black people talk about capitalism, right? Those want to replace. They say white capitalism. They want to replace it with black capitalism. Same structure, right?
Same thing.
Same structure. Rich black people suppressing poor black people.
Exploiting poor black people.
Same thing. I mean, that's what Mount Vernon is. That's what Mount Vernon is. Rich black people suppressing poor black people. That's what it is. That's what it is. All the way back to when black people took office.
I mean, the post-civil rights changes that have occurred in the wake of the civil rights movement give us an opportunity to reflect on the effectiveness of a strategy that says we need merely to replace white faces with black faces.
Right.
We see every time a black man or woman reaches the height of power in an institution, they essentially are required to adopt the values, the practices of their white predecessor. It's very little difference in terms of the way our businesses and political parties are run when you have a black face or white face in there. So we really need to begin to insist more on change, on the selection of leaders who represent new policies and just not new skin tones, because the skin tone ain't doing it. Instead, what you will have too often when you have a person of color who climbs to a position of power, he or she begins to ask constituents to turn a blind eye to their wrongdoing, their mismanagement, their corruption, because they are black and we need to act in solidarity with other black people. I don't support black people who rob me. I don't give a fuck if you black. If you robbing me, there's no reason for me to support you. Black people, you're not obligated to support black people who rob you. That is stupid. Let's keep it a buck. We're not obligated to turn a blind eye to political leaders like Mayor Thomas, who enact policies that are harmful to the interests of the very cities that they have been elected to lead, who promise a new generation of black political leadership, not by selecting from the leaders from amongst the citizens of their town like they're required to, but instead bring in foreigners, essentially, who don't live in our cities.
Insurgents.
Who drag all those resources out with them. When Joe Spezio or any, I bet, what we need to do is a study of the contracts, a zip code location of all contracts in the city of Mount Vernon. My working hypothesis is that 90% of the zip codes are going to be outside of Mount Vernon, and that the business owners...
90%?
Well, I was just being... I wanted
100%.
to say that, yeah, that's true. It's like 100%.
100%. You know what's crazy? I was in Mount Vernon for about 8 years. Been in different organizations in Mount Vernon for over 20 since the Million Man March. Ujima, and former president of the Universal Development Corporation with Dave Jones, where we help black businesses get loans and stuff like that in Mount Vernon. I heard more people say, yo, he's not from Mount Vernon than they said about Spezio. Right? So that shows me the cowardness, right? And I wasn't asking for anything, just doing it for the community, because understanding that Mount Vernon is the mecca for black people for all of Westchester. And until we have that attitude, until Mount Vernon goes up, black Westchester throughout, black people throughout will rise, because it should be the economic mecca, the economic center where everything comes out for the black people throughout Westchester. But that's too big enough thinking for Negroes. Right? To understand that's too much responsibility for Negroes to understand that on their shoulder is the economic system of the West, a black economic system for the rest of Westchester. That's big enough. That's too big enough thinking, right? For black law enforcement, the leadership should come out. If you have black law enforcement in positions all the way up to commissioner, where there's no other black commissioner in Westchester County, right? Mount Vernon police officers experience more. You could get an officer with 3 years on the job. He'll have more experience than an officer outside of Yonkers. Let's take out Yonkers, but an officer with 3 years on the job in Mount Vernon will have more experience than an officer in White Plains, Greenburgh, all these other towns, because they have seen more.
Right.
So they're valued. They should be valued. Let me correct that. They should be valued to be able to have an incubator of black officers to send out through these police departments that have less than 5% black cops. Right? But we don't think that way. Right? We think small. Right? We think small. And it's a reflection on the city. It's a reflection on the city. It's a reflection on how the city looks. Because we continue to think small, we don't think big. And we don't understand our responsibility, not to just the people that live in Mount Vernon, but the black people throughout Westchester, and probably the black people throughout New York State and the rest of the country, because there's only few cities like Mount Vernon in the whole United States. Only a few. So the responsibility is greater than what we think. But we have to understand our responsibility, because if we did understand our responsibility, Mount Vernon should be the Wakanda of Westchester.
In the American system of democracy, its local government has often been considered to be the lab of experimentation. The federal government, the state government, they're so big and unwieldy. It's hard to test out, pilot new innovative programs. That's a role that's best left to our municipalities, where they're small, they can be easily monitored and measured. Mount Vernon could be a new lab of democracy, because we're one of the few municipalities that have a solidly black majority. I think it's 63% of African Americans.
It might be
black.
more.
And then when you throw in people of color, I think my estimate is 88%.
Right.
Whites since the 60s in Mount Vernon have dwindled considerably. There's all kind of experimental programs that could be tested out in the city of Mount Vernon. One that I've advocated for a while has been community land trusts. Instead of black people basing an economic redevelopment policy on individual private ownership of property, sort of following the status quo, we need to go back to collective forms of ownership where we're pooling together our capital. And recently, the New York State legislature revised its nonprofit laws, and now they actually enacted a land bank policy that's going to allow local communities to take over abandoned properties in an effort to redevelop them. We could try to start some sort of economic stimulus program, redevelopment program that looks to find steady employment for people by redeveloping, renovating houses at the same time to give everyone a real ownership stake. But we need bold leadership that's willing to think outside the box, outside of the economic policy development framework we keep inheriting from the Democratic Party high up and the Republican Party higher up. This is an opportunity, but instead, what do we have? We have right now in the city of Mount Vernon, we have a mayor. I'm going to tell you, since I was his deputy campaign manager, we were all around. The mayor made a studied effort not to have discussions of real policy. We really just focus on getting the man elected. I understand that was his concern. But Mayor Thomas is squandering an opportunity to break with the status quo economic development and instead to try something new. But what he wants to do is he wants to reward his benefactors like Joe Spezio and others who come from outside of Mount Vernon, who look at Mount Vernon not as home, but as a meal ticket that will allow them to come up because they're going to take over all the property and resell it to the developers. But that's in the people of Mount Vernon's hands, whether or not we follow such a policy.
Well, I mean, you have to have good intentions to do good, right? So that answers all that question. But you know, it's in the hands of the people of Mount Vernon. It's in the hands of people of Mount Vernon to change it and change for the better. You don't have much left. I mean, you might not have a city left with all the lawsuits. So, I mean, that's something that that the people are going to have to deal with, and the people are going to have to be ready to deal with it on the seriousness to be a competitor, right? In Westchester in the state of New York. I mean, not bullshit slogans and wishes and beaches and ferries and all this other stuff. You know, I mean, real economic development, real help programs for the people. I mean, you got 30, 40 decades of people that need help, not just the children, but the parents. I mean, it has to be a serious, constructive plan to really help the people. To really help the people. Unless you have leadership that is serious enough to take on the county and state and sue for reparations. Right? Sue for reparations because the funds that has been denied of the city for decades of piling poor people and people that need assistance in a city that's 4 by 4 square miles and not giving the assistance. And not giving the proper assistance financially to help the people, and stop these damn developers building homes and start building homes for working families, working families. When I hear that teachers, single mothers that are teachers, cannot get into none of these buildings because they say that they make too much money, I have a problem with that. You know, it's bad enough that the city is, if you look at I mean, where is the master plan of the city?
Collecting dust in the library.
Have you seen it?
You see bits and pieces,
yeah,
old plans, and
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like what city doesn't have a master plan, right? What city doesn't have every city has a master plan. There's no master plan. I mean, people just come in winging it, selling property and trying to get paid. That's what it's all about. Ain't about the fucking people. Ain't about
my plan is to master you.
Yeah, right. Ain't about the development.
Plan.
It's about getting paid. It's about getting paid. So until the mindset of the politics in this city change, nothing's going to change because it's just about fucking getting paid. It ain't about serving the people. It's about getting paid. And that's why the city is in the condition that it's in, and that's why the people that is in the condition that it's in, because the people are getting nothing but hamburgers and hot dogs in the fucking summertime. by everybody. By everybody. So, I mean, until the people change themselves and until the leaders actually want to do right by the people, ain't nothing going to change. And it's just going to continue to be disrespect. And people just going to come in. They're going to come in a couple of Sundays before Election Day. They're going to go to all the big churches, and they're going to get your vote, and then you ain't going to see them. You ain't going to get no money, right? And if the money do come in, it's going to be to certain people, you know, that's politically connected, is going to get some money. But the hardworking people that do programs on the street ain't going to get anything. You know, so I mean that's the situation. But the question is, when are the people going to change it? When are people going to say enough is enough? I want my city to look like White Plains. Hell, I want it to look like Portchester. Anybody been to Portchester lately? It's booming. It's booming. Portchester, booming. Right? Everybody else is taking advantage of their surroundings. From Ossining, Peekskill is building up, Terrytown is building up. They take advantage of what their surroundings are. Right? But Mount Vernon. Right? So like, I mean, fuck it, it's goddamn 10 years and we still ain't get a goddamn field built. 10 goddamn years. Right? Some kid is going to elementary school, right? And he's never seen the field there. It's like a mystery. It's like some damn history book. Like I've never, like a kid never known, you got a kid walking the street that never seen a field there. Think about that shit.
Because the leaders of several administrations.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like, we can't build a field. We can't get our shit together to build a field. That's embarrassing for black people. I don't care where you live. It's a reflection on black leadership. Don't matter where you live in Westchester County. But we want to distance ourselves from it. We can't. You're black. You can't distance yourself. You can't, just like you can't distance yourself from Obama. You're black, regardless of the fact. I mean, we all had that Mount Vernon moment, right? When you're sitting in a restaurant, some shit come on TV, all the white people look at you. Because you're black. So, I mean, when do we all take responsibility? Not just the people that live in Mount Vernon, but the people outside of Mount Vernon. We all should have some type of responsibility. Because it's a reflection on everybody. And we all should want Mount Vernon to be the Wakanda of Westchester County, regardless. We all should want that. So, I mean, you know, we all should we all should be ashamed. We all should be ashamed because it's still a reflection on us. I don't care how many black people try to distance. Oh, that's Mount Vernon. Oh, no, that's a reflection on you too, bro. It's a reflection. I mean, you know, until we have honest conversations about what's going on, we will never start doing anything correctly. Before we go, I know Tasha wants us to talk about the event that's going on next Saturday. It's a voter rally and canvas, right? And it's aimed to celebrate and promote the candidates and to promote the democracy for people to get out and vote on the next election, November 8th. November 8th is Saturday, November 3rd, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. The location is 500 Main Street, New Rochelle, New York. It's free. You can go on Eventbrite, and it's other voter rally and canvas. And do the search. It's put on by the Westchester Black Political Conference. Other organizations, I gotta look at the flyer to pull out all the other organizations that's on the flyer.
Oh, I see one of my former advisors.
Minister Hafiz said he was trying to call on the 718. It was saying it was unavailable. Oh, okay. Oh, man. He was actually trying to call in 914. I was wondering why.
So, yes, I want to encourage everyone to attend the voter rally and canvass in New Rochelle on Saturday, November 3rd from 12 to 2. I know I'm going to make it a point to be there and try to encourage people to wage that Democratic battle. You know, look, everyone, we're in a tough fight. There are a myriad of things that must be done if we are going to address the challenges that confront us. Some of these things take more effort, some take less effort. There's few things that could require less in the way of effort than actually voting. Right. I mean, that's the thing that kills me, though. It's like, you know what? Okay, you use all your tools, and this is a tool that is readily within people's grasp. You know, it's one of the easiest things that you could do, to organize demonstrations and, you know, start organizations. That's a much, that's a much deeper long-term project.
Assalamu alaikum. Brother Minister. No, it's not working.
It might not, because AJ was trying to call it earlier. We couldn't.
Oh, it wasn't working?
Yeah. Technical difficulty.
Yeah. Having technical problems. Oh. Let's try one more time. He's trying to call it. Assalamu alaikum. Hello? Oh, now nobody can hear us now. No, it's not working.
Thank you, though. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'll work on it.
Tasha said, Indivisible New Rochelle, next Saturday, Indivisible Latino, Progressive Women of New York are also co-sponsors of the event. Mr. Hafiz was trying to call in. No, we only got a few minutes left. We got to reschedule the brother to come on the show. Maybe next Sunday we could work it out. I'll call him after the show. He said, I see. And call you. Yes. Sandra Rose says he no longer lives in 914, but we as a people are not even keeping up on these issues. Like how many support this live, and the Black Westchester. I hardly see this shared. Well, we're going to share more, Sandra. Thanks for being part of the show, and we hope you tune in more. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for participation and joining in on and joining in on the conversation. We really appreciate you, and we hope to see you next Sunday. Yeah, we hope to see you next Sunday. I'm not sure who's on. Maybe we could get Hafiz on next Sunday. It'd be the third. Maybe the third time is a charm for Minister Hafiz. See if we could get see we get the brother to the studio, because I really want to talk about the anniversary of the Million Man March, and and where we are as black men.
Is it the 20th anniversary that we're celebrating?
I think it's the 23rd.
The 23rd.
I believe it's the 20. Yeah, it's the 23rd.
I was contemplating. I remember watching it from my dorm room in graduate school on 44th Street.
Really?
Yes, I was in school that day, but some time ago.
Man, let me tell you, man. I remember that day. We drove down a contingent of correction officers. We all met up at the jail, and we rented three vans.
Mm.
And I got suckered, man, because I drove all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
And then nobody wanted to drive back, and I drove back. I remember that day. I was mad as hell, man. Because, I mean, you was out there all day. You got there like 8, 9 in the morning. But you know what the most beautiful thing about that day was 95 was black. I mean, the whole 95. Whole 95 was black.
Right.
Man, you stopped at a rest stop, wasn't but just black people. It was just a sea of black all the way down, man. It was just beautiful. That was the beautiful thing. Outside, I think just driving down and everybody was proud, man. Because remember, people like I know Greenberg had to say it wasn't no school because the bus driver said, "Yo, we ain't driving today. We going to the march."
Mm-hmm.
So they had no buses, right? So we took. I think we had a spirit in that day that I just pray we could get back. Now people are scared to call in sick for something for the struggle.
Right,
but anyway, I think that's it. Right, the show's over. That's
it, everybody.
Right, the show's over. I want to thank everybody. That tuned in today. Michael Garrett, D. Wilson, Charlie Khalil, Lad George, Sandra Rose, Motumbo Muhammad, Tasha, Cynthia, Montika Jones. Let me see. There's a couple of people watching now. Let me see. Try to get y'all. I'm trying to get y'all. The Future Society, Adrian Armstrong. Thanks everybody for your continued support, and I hope we touched something today. I hope we said something today that will make your week better and make you want to address some type of issue this week.
Machinations.
Machinations. That's the word of the week. Machinations. Next week, Bob will have another word. Peace out. Thank you.
Peace.
Later.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has